Okay, so I'm starting the recording. I'm going to share the screen now. Okay. Let me see if I can go in here. Welcome to Advanced Toastmasters Online. This is some online meeting tips. Use headsets or earbuds if you have them. Make sure that you mute yourself or mute your mic when you're not speaking. This actually helps feedback within the meeting. You can also toggle your video on and off by clicking this little button here. If you're eating something or if you need to step away from your video camera space from your personal stage, you might want to turn your camera off so nobody sees the stage empty. If you have questions and notes for the speakers, click on where it says chat here, and you can click on that, send private notes to the speakers once they are finished speaking. Please don't do that while somebody is speaking. It's very distracting, so just save it in between the speaking roles of the meeting. This meeting will be recorded. Our policy is by participating in our meeting, you agree to be recorded, and the recording will be available on YouTube. If you have a speech, we have had a speech be removed from our recording, so if you need that to happen because you're competing or whatever, just let me know, or let us all know, and we'll make sure that that gets done. And right now, that's my role, so I'll do that for you. If you want to join the club, click here where it says Quick Start. I actually think I've changed that now. It says Join the Club or something similar, but you'll see that's where you'll go to do that. And this is pretty much the menu bar. And say hello, everyone. I will do that at the very end, and we'll capture everybody's picture again so we can use it for publicity for future meeting PR. And welcome. And at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our Toastmaster of the day, Jim Adams. Remember to mute yourself while you're not speaking. So welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Would you like for us to wave now, or would you like for us to wave later?
Yes, let's wave now.
All right. So everybody, hi from Kentucky. I'm going to be your Toastmaster today. We do have a new member, so to speak, or a new participant today, which is Patricia, which joined us last week. I think just as a matter of courtesy, I would like for us to introduce ourselves very briefly, if you don't mind. And I'd like to point out who people are, and if you could just take two or three sentences and share who you are, and we'll get that base covered. So unmute yourselves, everybody, for just a quick second. And I'd like for, let's go around the table, and in this case, around the screen. And I'd like to ask Lori Whitmore to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Lori, and we met Patricia in Limerick, Ireland, when I was practicing my division contest speech there. We hit it off. Patricia, the president of a club there, and we made a connection.
Fantastic. How about you, Andrea?
I'm Andrea Sanger, and I am from Palm Springs, California, where it's really sunny and kind of warm today, and hopefully it won't be too windy. I am in a club here in Palm Springs, and I'm looking forward to today.
Great. Doug?
I'm Doug Thiessen. I'm a Toastmaster for nearly 20 years. A lot of that was in Canada, but I live in Cleveland, Ohio now.
Great. Rick?
Hi, Patricia. You know me, Rick Weiner. Last time I saw her, she was wearing this beautiful medallion for being president of her club. And I look forward to having her join us as a member.
Great. Pamelah?
I'm also in Palm Springs. I'm Pamelah Landers, and Andrea and I are in the same club in Palm Springs. And yes, it's sunny, but it's only going to be 85 today, Andrea. Not getting hot for a few more days. And I'm happy to be here.
Great. Dawn?
Hi, I'm Dawn Nocera, and I am on my way to DTM. I'm here in Columbus, Ohio. where I'm looking forward to sunnier times and sunnier days. Back to you.
And Patricia.
Hi, well, my name is Patricia O'Connell. I'm from Limerick in Ireland. It's the southwest of Ireland. I'm in Toastmasters over 11 years, and I found my journey through Toastmasters very enjoyable, and I have achieved my DTM. So I'm looking forward to joining your club. And I did make friends with Laurie and Rick when they visited Limerick Toastmasters here in Ireland. Back to you.
Fantastic. All right, everyone mute yourselves so we can progress and proceed. I'm Jim Adams. I'm from Kentucky. I'm a member of 2 clubs currently right now because I just moved locally from one city to another. So I'm going to be doing both of those. I'm excited about that. So I guess I'm participating in 3 different clubs down here. And I've been a member since 2004. And I can't really brag about all the awards that I could have had up to now if I had done my paperwork. But it has been an exciting adventure since 2004. I've really benefited a lot from it. So today's theme, I also want to share before we get too far down the road, is perspective. Perspective was shared with us from Dawn on, I think, through Messenger and on Facebook. I had not thrown out a theme prior to the this meeting. So perspective is what was shared with me for a possible table topics master role that was going to be held by a new person, Sandy, who wasn't able to make it today. So we're going to look forward to seeing Sandy sometime in the future. I really have enjoyed pondering this morning over coffee, since it was only this morning that I realized that we have this theme, the word perspective, the word and what it might entail. So I just want to share with all of you basically and suggest that you keep in mind the word perspective as we move forward in this meeting and actually through the course of the week. I really believe that this word, which I guess if you pull out your thesaurus, can mean vantage and point of view. It has so many ramifications in how we interact with people, and it makes us a better Toastmaster when you can appreciate the word and everything behind the word. I mean, as a Toastmaster, to have the sense of other people's perspective allows us to know the audience, for example, and as, say, an evaluator, we are giving a perspective that maybe the speaker was not aware of when they're presenting. So perspective has a lot of weight when it comes to being a maverick leader, a communicator, and basically in life. It makes us a more well-rounded person when we realize that we do not have the only perspective. And I think if we keep that in mind and carry that forward in our daily lives, it really is a positive thing to add to our discussions with people and interacting in general. So that being said, I do want to go ahead and indicate and share the role. I think we all were here pretty early, so the only exceptions that were changed was that Lori's now going to be Table Topics Master. General Evaluator is Pamelah. Doug's going to be Odd Counter. Trisha's going to be our Timer and Evaluator. And Rick is going to be evaluating Lori. Is that correct still? Are we still good with that? Or what was the deal? We weren't going to have that happen at all now?
That's correct. Lori was not going to speak.
Okay. So, Rick, what is your role then today?
I have none.
Okay. So, Table Topics Master, guess who your primary target is today? Anyway, that's great. Rick, we will...
Could we have Rick do the timer so Patricia doesn't have to do 2 roles?
That would be good if Rick is prepared enough. Oh, he's got it. He's got a set. He's got something green and yellow and red in front of him. So, Patricia, is that okay to yank that?
That's perfect. That's perfect.
Okay, good. And then the only other thing is, since she's evaluating, we don't have to worry about Doug filling in during her evaluation portion. So that's great. I would like to forego the explanation of the roles at this point, only because I know everybody here and we don't have any guests that we need to share unless anyone has anything that they want to share about specific roles. And I'll defer to Dawn if you've got anything in addition, and we'll get moving. No? All right.
Hold on, except for the grammarian. I think maybe he might have a word for the day. Maybe we can ask him
Right.
about that.
I do have a word for the day.
Please share.
Okay. Our word for the day is plethora, which I will put in the chat. It means, and someone muted me.
Yep.
The word of the day is plethora, which means an abundance or a large amount of something. And I have a real quick story, which I think exemplifies the word. The setting is a funeral, and a man walks up to the new widow and says, "May I say a word at this service?" She says, "Yeah, that's okay." So at the right time, the man stands up and he says, "Plethora." And he sits down again. And the widow says, "Thank you so much. That means a lot." Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Very good. I like it. I like it a lot. All right. One thing that I want to do a little bit differently, only because I was not as prepared as I was hoping to be, was to introduce our speaker with the introduction that I do not have. So I would like to put a little more onus on the evaluator about the speaker's role, the objectives. And if I could ask the evaluator, Patricia, if you could share with us the speaker's roles and information about the speech that you know of.
Okay, Mr. Toastmaster, I did some research into Andrea's speech, and it's the interview project 2. And the objectives are to understand the dynamics of a TV or interview or talk show, to prepare for questions that may be asked, present a positive image on camera, and to appear as a guest on a simulated talk show. And the time for the speech is 5 to 7 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. So let's go ahead and greet our speaker for today, Andrea, with her speech.
Jim, I just sent you privately, sorry. I just sent you privately the introduction. I think it will be helpful for you to read that if you could.
Gotcha, thank you so much. So today, Donna Sarah will be interviewing Andrea Sanger. Andrea has a BA in Business Administration with a concentration in Marketing, a master's and a doctorate in Practical Ministry. She will earn her Advanced Communicator Bronze next week and is planning to have her DTM late in 2019. She is a self-proclaimed introvert with too many interests and hobbies to pin her down on anything. Though this interview, she hopes that you will learn some things about her that will surprise you. So please help me welcome Andrea.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Dawn.
Let me unpin. Okay, got it. So, Andrea, can you say something so I'll toggle back to you?
Yes, I'm talking, but you're the only person in my screen. So is that what is happening to everyone else also?
I see you now. You're up in my screen.
I see Andrea as well, yes.
Yeah, good. So everyone else, if you could mute yourself, that would be awesome, and I'll begin the interview. And hopefully our timer can start the time now. Andrea, I understand that your name has a really interesting backstory. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my mother was taking an art history class when she was pregnant with me, and she became enamored with a painter by the name of Andrea del Castagnaro. And he is one of the fathers in the Renaissance period that drew and painted in perspective. And I'm just going to show you one of his paintings here so you can see perspective in this. And the perspective is the line that goes along here, and all of the background things that are going on behind the main picture. And when we're talking about perspective, I just want to be clear that I am one of those people that is as part of perspective because of my parents, of my mom. And so perspective is a large part of my life. I'm always looking in the background, looking for other things, looking for why somebody is doing what they're doing. I'm looking farther and farther into the distance of their lives just to see what's going on.
Wow. That's amazing. And I love art history, so I love that connection. So how does this information help us understand or get to know you better, Andrea?
Well, actually, my parents wanted a boy. So being named Andrea or Andrea was important for me in my life, because then if you looked up, when I was little, I looked up my name, and in Greek, it's manly, it's strong, it's all these very male-orientated words. And honestly, I hated my name when I was a kid because of that, because I was a girl, and I was named after a boy. And especially when you pronounce it Andrea. And most people in America right now, because of our Spanish influence, pronounce it Andrea, which actually for me is kind of offensive, because it really says to me that male name, because of Andrea, the painter. So I would prefer my name to be pronounced Andrea, very Americanized version of that, with the ah sound, the very nasally sound. That's something that's very important to me. But it made me very kind of a strong person as I was growing up.
I could definitely see how that could happen. So how has your perspective changed over time, Andrea?
One of the things about that definition is because we are in America being more and more influenced by the Latino community, Andrea in the Latino community has another connotation. It adds to it bravery and courage and elegance. And I really like that I get to be now elegant and brave and courageous. With those words, I've grabbed hold of those. And I'm a very courageous person. I regularly jump into things that I probably shouldn't, because I just am excited about the challenge of new things. And for example, over a 10-year period, I had a plethora of jobs. And I'd like you to listen to this, and I'm going to ask you all a kind of a question over it at the end. I had a job. I was a cashier, a head cashier. I was a buyer's assistant. I sold women's clothing. I sold accessories like scarves and things. I was a new accounts representative. In the middle of that, I moved to Seattle so that my husband and I could run a halfway house. And I became a collector. Collecting on bad debt. I worked in customer service. I wrote manuals, technical manuals. I was a systems analyst. I was a trainer. I worked microfiching. I actually ran the old microfiche machines where you took pictures of things. I also printed credit cards, the real credit cards, those hard plastic things. I actually ran the machines that did that. I audited collection agencies. I did a variety of a plethora of jobs. How many companies do you all think I worked for during that period of time? Just hold up your fingers. Okay, I worked for 2 companies. I worked for Nordstrom and Nordstrom Credit, and that's all. I love to have a variety of things. I like the perspective of that.
Wonderful, Andrea. So I have another question. You've done all these things, this plethora of things in the past. So what are you doing now?
So right now, I am running a nonprofit ministry in Palm Springs, California, that ministers to homeless, people that are newly out of recovery centers, and also who have been disenfranchised by the church. I'm writing a memoir. I'm writing a blog. I'm mentoring people. I'm teaching classes on prayer. And I just, for the fun of it, am an artist. I just like to keep myself busy. I hate just sitting around. I like the perspective of doing many different things.
That's amazing. Thank you. Do you have anything else that you would like to add, Andrea, before we turn the meeting back over?
Sure. I think that with that perspective in mind, I just wanted all of you to kind of get to know me a little bit. There's a lot more going on because I am an introvert. You won't usually hear me chit-chatting at the beginning or at the end, but I do have a lot of interests, and I'm interested in all of you, and that is my perspective to get into this club, is to see what everybody else is doing, because I am so interested in so many things. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Andrea. It was such a pleasure to interview you today and to see your different perspectives. So at this time, I would like to turn the meeting back over to Jim.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Big hands. I am also an introvert, and I don't know if people can catch that or not. I think I cover it and conceal it pretty well, but my preference is to sit with a cup of coffee by myself in most instances. So I enjoy the perspective that you've shared with us today. Really quickly, I guess we'll have a full-timers report that will be given by requested by the general evaluator, so I won't ask at this point. Let's go ahead and move on with the next portion of our meeting. And I would like to introduce our table topics master that is going to be sharing with us some of her questions. And that is for Lori to take the center stage. Please help me welcome Lori Whitmore.
Hi, everyone. I am a converted introvert into an extrovert. And I have a set of questions that I prepared related to risk-taking and taking courage. And I'm interested in hearing your perspective about risk-taking. I will read a question and then call on speakers. Do you think people are born as risk takers or scaredy cats? And do you think they grow into those roles? Doug.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Are people naturally risk takers or scaredy cats? I really think it's a personality question. There are definitely people who are seemingly born risk takers. As children, they're bold, they're wild, they're up to all sorts of things. I should say a plethora of things. But at the same time, there are other children that are much more in the scaredy cat perspective. There was a colleague that was telling a story about two of her children. I think the ages were 3 and 7. The 3-year-old was definitely a risk taker. He would love to climb trees and do all sorts of things. And she was telling a story of the two of them playing in the backyard. And she discovered the little kid about 8 feet up the tree going, "Mommy, Mommy, look at me. Look how high I am." And she's like, "Get down from there. What are you doing?" And also asking, "Where is your big brother? He's supposed to be looking after you." Well, she discovered the big brother had also he had been persuaded to try and climb the tree a little bit, but he scraped his hand just trying to get started. So he had to run to the bathroom and get a Band-Aid immediately, while the little brother made his way several further feet up the tree before he slipped and fell down a bit. Didn't come out hurt, but definitely well scraped. He's bleeding. He doesn't care. And the big brother, he's still trying to find a Band-Aid for the tiny little scratch on his palm. So I think that taking risks can be learned, but it also can be innate. Or you can be a scaredy cat. It's your personality.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Doug. I agree. I think that it can be an innate trait or it can be learned to be a risk taker. If you could take a trip to anywhere, what is the most exciting, dangerous, or intriguing place you would choose? Patricia. Patricia, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm off mute now. All right. The most exciting or dangerous place that I would go to, if I could choose, I think I'm thinking back to when I was a child, and I'm going to look at this, the most exciting place that my brother and I went to when we were children, because we're half Irish, half Scottish. And my father took us over to Scotland, and we went up the Highlands, and it was absolutely exciting. It was mind-blowing because it challenged us, to reach for what we had to go for. And I think it helped us to see things in a different perspective, the great outdoors, the great landscape. And even though when my father wasn't around, we were warned that it was extremely dangerous not to go out on our own, we still ventured out. We still wanted to do our own thing. And to be honest, it was fantastic. Madam Topics Master.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Loved hearing about that story. What is one food that would require courage for you to eat? Rick.
Oh, what a great question for me, Lori. You know me. One food that would take great courage to eat. Well, I eat a lot of different things, but I don't generally like seafood that much. Fish, of course, I don't eat shellfish and pork. So a food that would make me that I would need courage for. Well, I love sausages, beef sausages, turkey sausages. And I understand, I'm not that familiar with it, but there is a thing called blood sausage. I couldn't eat it. The thought of eating something like that would just turn me off totally. I've tried many different things in my life and things that I probably shouldn't have tried, but I've been willing to try, and found that there's a plethora of different flavors and textures and sights. But foods that have a strange texture to them, I have a hard time getting past the tongue. Therefore, I'm going to stay with my red meat, potatoes, vegetables, a little bit of vegetables, and be very, very happy enjoying all the good things that we were meant to have. Madam Topics Master.
Thank you, Rick. I thought you were going to say something like alligator or snake.
Not kosher.
Now, I'm sure all of you have had a plethora of experiences in your life. Tell us about one time when you were absolutely terrified and clearly survived. Pam.
And it's Pamelah, please.
Pamelah, I'm sorry. Pamelah.
Thank you. I remember last decade, I was doing a lot of really deep personal work and dealing with a lot of fear. And I had one night, in a really irrational way, was sure somebody was in my closet. I was so petrified, even though I knew mentally nobody was there, emotionally I couldn't get over it. So I called a friend of mine in Texas. I was in California. I called a friend of mine in Texas in the middle of the night and asked him to just stay on the phone with me until it became light, because I was just petrified. And of course he said, there's nobody in your closet. And I could hear that, but I didn't believe it. And I was completely terrified. I realized that the value of that experience was that it was okay to feel terror. And it was okay to feel terror if I had somebody supporting me in the process. And it was okay to feel terror if I could admit to myself that I felt it, even though it was seemingly unrealistic. That didn't feel unreal to my body. So that was a huge experience of feeling terrified, getting help from somebody to work through it instead of trying to do it on my own, and coming out the other end feeling more courageous and feeling stronger. Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Pamela. It's always great to hear when someone knows how to get resource for them. It's great to hear about that. Next question. Tell us about a time when your own level of courage surprised you. Jim.
Thank you very much, Madam Table Topics Master. My own courage surprised me. It's somewhat similar to courage, I think, but the most immediate memory that comes back was when I was so struck immediately with fear after this terrible incident that happened between me and my sister. She's 4 years younger than me, and at that time she was probably 4, and I was about 8, and we were racing back to the house, from mailbox back to the house, just a fun moment. And as we raced to the front door, she stopped herself by putting her hands up on the glass pane of the storm window. Back in the day, those were just regular glass. And she went right through it. She went right through it halfway, so she was kind of stuck at her torso in a broken window with her hands and her head and her shoulders and everything on one side of the door, and the bottom of her body on the other side of the door. And at 8 years old, I immediately went to the phone to dial 911. Even though my parents were right there, I yelled, I let them know what was going on, and the first thing I did, just instinctively, was to call. And I thought that it was just spontaneous. It wasn't even something I thought about doing. It just happened that way. Mm-hmm. And I just remember my parents being so proud of the way I responded to that event. And I think because it happened when I was so young, it probably was it formed my personality probably at the time. Mm-hmm. It was a very traumatic event. It was a proper reaction to a traumatic event. It was feedback and love from the family. And I think that's probably my first remembrance of doing something inspired by your question, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Jim. It sounds like it's become an important reference point for you in your life to remind you of your strength. That's great. Never say never. What is one thing that you've seen other speakers or performers do that you would never ever do in front of a crowd? And what would happen if you did? Dawn.
So, Lori, loving these questions. One of the things that you don't know about me is I never say never. Because I am one of those risk takers that if I'm challenged, I probably would do it just because I can. However, one of the things that I'm imagining, I'm trying to think, what is something that I have seen a speaker do that I would never do? I have heard of a presenter at a very private event actually taking off their clothes. I would never do that as a challenge to show that you're courageous to do something out of the box, and somebody actually got up and did that. I don't think I would ever do that. And pretty much everything else I would break the rules.
Mm-hmm.
I would do the thing that they say not to do. And hopefully I would do it in a way that engages people and doesn't turn them off. So with that, back to you, Madam Topics Master.
Thank you, Dawn. On with you, naked presenter. Mm-mm. We have naked comedy here in the Boston area, and I don't get it. The comedian is naked, the audience is not. Crazy. And finally, our last table topic speaker. In our culture, tigers are often used as a symbol of courage. What animal would you say best fits your personality? Andrea.
Well, that one's actually pretty easy. It's something that I've thought about a lot. I would describe myself as a beaver. I'm very industrious. I keep myself busy. I'm always creating new things, creating that dam that's going to stop the flow of things just because I could. I like that part of me. But also, if you back a beaver into a corner, you do not want to be around that beaver, because that beaver is going to bite you. It's going to be cranky. It's going to hiss and growl at you. And that's pretty much the kind of person I am. You don't want to back me into a corner, because I am the kind of person that will fight back. I don't have a problem doing that. Because I am courageous and very strong and brave, I am not going to back down if you push me into a corner. So I would call myself a beaver. I am very industrious. I like to do a lot of different things. I like to pull things in from other places, knock things down to make that happen. And then if you back me into a corner, you're not going to be happy. Back to you, Madam Topics Master.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Great answers to my questions. Now I'll turn it back to our Toastmaster, Jim.
Thanks, Lori. That was great. And just as a side note, my new home is in Richmond, and there's a group Facebook page for the neighborhood. And the big gossip, and I've not interjected yet, is this beaver that they hate that's just up the street that's causing someone's backyard to flood. And I really am compelled to start saying, go beaver. And I'm just not sure if I want to have the entire neighborhood hate me yet. But on one hand, I kind of do, just to introduce myself. Anyway, thank you very much for that. Great table topics questions. I know we got a lot of them in, so let's go ahead and quickly turn back over to our general evaluator to run the rest of the balance of the meeting. Please help me welcome Pamelah Landers. Pamelah.
Thank you very much, Jim. Okay, as general evaluator, I'm going to be introducing our evaluator for our speaker. So Andrea is our speaker and Patricia is the evaluator. So Patricia, could you please give us an evaluation for Andrea?
Will do. Could I ask our timer for the time for Andrea's speech, please?
Exactly 7 minutes.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Timer. Andrea, I looked today at the objectives for your speech, and I thought you had a lot to fill in. I thought, looking at you the way you presented, I felt that you were very well prepared. I also thought that you came across as a subject matter expert, because the way you were able to put the portrait up on screen and you were able to made you a knowledge-based expert. I felt that the way you talked about yourself, the way you talked about your mother, what you do, I felt that it came across really well. I'm going to give you came across really as a strong person. You brought emotion into your speech, so you were well prepared for us. I felt that what you did in your speech that could improve would be, I felt that you were using your hands a lot over Heather. So maybe that is something that you could work upon for your next speech. There could be a distraction. I felt that you did meet the objectives. I felt that you handled Dawn's questions really well, and you came across really as a knowledge-based expert. So overall, I enjoyed listening to your speech. I felt that it was very well delivered, and I look forward to your next speech, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you very much, Patricia. All right. I would like now, Rick, to get a timer's report on table topics and evaluator.
All right. As I said, the speaker was exactly 7 minutes, and the evaluation was exactly 2 minutes. The table topics. Doug entertained us for 2 minutes and 11 seconds. Patricia, 1 minute and 14 seconds. Myself, 1 minute and 27 seconds. Pamela, 1 minute 33 seconds. Jim, 1 minute 57. Dawn, 1 minute 22. And Andrea, 1 minute 6.
Great. Thank you very much, Rick. Since we have a little bit of extra time today, I would like to see if anybody wanted to add any comments of evaluation for Andrea. We had been suggested by Lori that we do that at some point, and we have time to do that today before I call on our grammarian report or I do an evaluation report. So is there anybody who would like to share and give Andrea some feedback on her speech?
I would.
Okay.
And Andrea, is it pronounced Andrea or Andrea?
Andrea.
Andrea.
Andrea. I noticed that you spoke with so much confidence. You were exuding confidence. You were telling us that about yourself, but you demonstrated it in your gestures, in your facial expressions, and I see that as an incredible strength that you have as a speaker. I wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Yes, Jim.
I just want to say that your asking the group how many jobs you held was very nicely done, because it didn't take up any time vocally. People were able to hold up their fingers, and it was very participatory. So it's a very unique approach that I think suits this type of environment well. I like that part of it very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else would like to give Andrea? Dawn.
I would just like to say, Andrea, that this was very easy on my part to help you and support you because you were super prepared. And I thought it was a great way to do this speech as a introduction to who you are and to give us a piece of your story and your history and how your life is full of perspective and how important that is. And I had definitely had the perspective that you are a complete maverick, and I'm happy to have you in the club. So
Thanks.
back to you, Pamela.
Thank you, Dawn. Anybody else? Okay, I'd like to add, Andrea, that I am so glad that you are clarifying how to say your name, because I know from our Palm Springs Club there are a couple people who are of Latino background who call you Andrea. Other people call you Andrea, and I know it irritates you. So thank you for saying that out loud so that people can be really conscious of what you want. It's like, I hate it when people call me Pam, so I'm always correcting them because I just hate it. Don't call me that, right? So I completely understand your desire and appreciate you sharing that about yourself. And I think you did a good job, and it was a good way to be introduced to the club is through an interview process versus doing a speech about yourself. I like the inventiveness of that. I like the maverickness of that as a way to say, oh, here's something about who I am. Well done with that. And I also like how you're keeping yourself very centered between those two knobs on your door and the line directly above your head. It makes me so happy because my artistic side doesn't like it when you're not lined up. So thank you for consciously making that choice. It's very helpful for your background.
Thanks.
To be I know you paid attention to that, so that's why I'm commenting on it. I know you've made an effort to make that happen. I want to applaud your effort. It takes a lot. It's like a plethora of choices that you have to make in order to be able to figure out what your background is. For all of us, it's this video thing is really a fascinating process about how do we deal with the backgrounds of where we are. So thank you for demonstrating really well. Okay, any other comments for Andrea? All right, Jim.
It's a comment really for the dynamic interaction between Andrea and Dawn. I felt like there was an excessive delay between speaker and replying back from Dawn. I don't know how you address that in this venue, but I just wanted to say it was noticeable to me. That's all.
Thank you, Jim, for that. Okay, I'm going to evaluate Patricia. Patricia, you used the normal sandwich method of what happened well, what could be improved, what happened well. I honor that process. I think your suggestions were very good about what could be improved for Andrea and what she did well. So, of course, many years of experience in Toastmasters, you have this down pretty pat. Thank you for providing such valuable feedback, and I appreciate everybody else's feedback as well. I think it's helpful to have multiple inputs, and I appreciate that we had time to do that today. Can I get a report, Doug, on the grammarian counter?
Sure. I think everybody spoke pretty well today. The use of was pretty low. Actually, the main word that seemed to be the more favored word is and when people are pausing. But Jim had 2 ahs or ums. He had 3 ands and 1 so. I did like his phrase, pondering over coffee. That was good. Patricia, definitely you were using and in your table topics quite a bit. It was over 5. There were a couple of ums in your evaluation, but I didn't count any ands for that. So that was kind of interesting. I did like your use of the word ventured. Andrea, and just to cover this, this is for any time that people are speaking, not for any specific role. So Andrea, you had 3 ums. You used the word of the day twice. That was great. I like the word use of the word enamored. And I was going to also point out a word, but then I learned something. At one point you said you were orientated. And I thought, isn't the word oriented? It turns out, as I was just learning, that in a more British usage, orientate is the more common usage. But in America, orient tends to be more commonly used. So you'd be oriented if you were in the United States, but in Britain, or probably other places, orientated would be used more often.
Just a note on that, since you were in Canada, I grew up in the Northwest and was taught actually by a Canadian, English-speaking Canadian to speak. So I do have both going on sometimes.
Oh, sure. This wasn't a correction. It was actually an interesting observation. I learned something new. I looked it up as we were speaking today. Moving along, though. On, you had 1 you had 3 ands, and 2 so's. Also used the word of the day, so good job there. Lori used and once. The rest was clean. Had 1 use of the word of the day. And I like the phrase exuding confidence. That was very well done. Rick, very clean. You used the word of the day once. And I did enjoy the phrase, you had a hard time getting past the tongue for the foods you were talking about. And then Pamelah, also clean in what I heard, but did use the word of the day, great. And I like the word petrified. Back to you, Pamelah, our general evaluator.
Thank you very much, Doug. I'm going to add one more grammarian comment that you may not have caught. Jim said my sister and I, when he could have said my sister and me, which would have been the appropriate grammatical thing to say because it was an object of, I can't remember what it was an object of, but it should have been me. Okay, I'm going to evaluate the meeting. Today our beginning was a little messy in terms of getting technology set up, and there were some people unprepared for things that they were doing. And Andrea, before the meeting, had asked Jim, which I don't think he heard, whether or not he had her introduction. He didn't hear it. That never got addressed again. So that happened just before he was introducing her. So that might be one thing we can pay attention to, is to Andrea, if he didn't get a response, to ask the question again, to make sure that the Toastmaster is prepared with what you had spent time preparing and getting organized, ready to do. Jim, we didn't get the mission statement read today, and all of the stuff that was happening at the beginning of the meeting. It's a habit we haven't completely gotten into, and it's not something that we're in the process of learning to get that be a habit, but it didn't happen today, so I just was aware of that happening. On table topics, I really appreciated that the questions that were asked, Lori, because we learned things about people. I always love table topics when we're learning things about people on a personal level. Personally, that's very interesting to me. So thank you for the questions that you came with, and for people being so authentic in the sharing, because I think it really helps us to get to know you, which makes us feel more like a community. It's not as easy to feel like a community online, but having these authentic sharings helps create that community feeling that we all love about being in a Toastmasters group, especially in our physical group where we have that experience. So thank you, I appreciate that. The other thing that I noticed today is that at the beginning of the meeting, there was a lot, while we were preparing for the meeting, there was a lot of confusion about who's doing what and stuff. I don't know where that was going on. And I think Lori could have also done a speech today, because if it were an icebreaker, it would have been 4 to 6 minutes. I think we could have fit that in if we had wanted to. We had lots of time to be able to do that today. As a result of her not doing that, we had more time for an evaluation, more feedback for Andrea of that happening. But I would just like I'm the vice president of my home club, so I just want to say I'm on top of things all the time, and it makes me a little bit crazy when things are confusing. So I get stressed when things aren't organized, which is why I'm the vice president of my club, so I can be in charge of making that happen. So that's my stuff to deal with, is my frustration, but I also feel like I don't know what we need to do to get more organized and be prepared before the meeting starts, because today it just felt like we spent a lot of time trying to figure things out at the last minute. That's personally very frustrating for me. Okay, so I think we did a good job today, and of course our speech was great, and we're all experienced people. We're taking ourselves to the next level. I'd just like to encourage us to take ourselves to the next level of whatever that is for who you are. Like, what is it? We're here to be maverick leaders. What is it that you want to extend and grow for your own leadership skill sets and your own out-of-the-box maverickness? And bring that here. Let's help each other support and expand our skill sets in those areas and take some risks. Be more expansive in what it is that we're here for. That would be that's my philosophy conversation for today. So, all right, I'm complete. Jim, are you back to you?
Sure, if you're complete, then
I'm feeling complete.
Thank you very much for your evaluation.
You're welcome.
I've come to appreciate you and fear you at the same time. Because
people tell me that all the time.
I almost was going to start out my table topics response with our mission statement, because I knew that you were going to say something eventually. So you beat me to the punch. Touche. It won't happen again, I assure you. Well, one thing I just want to share is that there was one member that in our club that is from Africa, and he goes over there on an annual basis. And one thing that he brought back is they've actually, in this one club he goes to, they've actually memorized the mission statement. And he hasn't, but he's made all of us, as part of his thing, recite the mission statement. I've taken it upon myself to memorize the regular Toastmasters Club mission. And everyone's amazed. Even the people that have been Toastmasters for 15 years do not have their mission statement memorized. It's a matter of pride for me now to just be able to rattle it off. I think we all should be able to do the same with our Maverick Leadership mission statement and not have to look at a piece of paper. So that's a challenge for all of us. It's only 3 sentences. If you've ever been in an acting class, it's a very low bar to cross. But I really think that it's not above us to be able to memorize a single sentence and to be able to spout it off if we need to. So thank you very much, everybody, for to allow me to be your Toastmaster today. I don't have anything else. I do have one thing, but I'll save it for after we're done. Just a couple of things about the different dynamics that we might be practicing in our real clubs that I want to cover, but not during the course of this meeting. So I'll turn it back over to our president, and that is Dawn Nocera. Thank you, Dawn.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. And if it's okay with everyone, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and then open up our agenda for next week so we can get started. So this time, we're going to adjourn the meeting, gavel down, and stop recording.